Hello, welcome back to Women Speaks. Today we are going to talk about a generous woman. This woman is so giving. I just love her heart. She genuinely wanted to give to the women, to the men of God, without expecting anything in return. I just love that about her because she genuinely wanted to give. And in return, God has blessed her tremendously. We can basically find her story in 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 8 through 37. We are not going to read the full chapter. This is just something for you to read on your own. But just to find out how she basically speaks, it's just so powerful. It teaches women how to help other people, how to welcome others into our home, into our lives. Also, how to give without expecting anything in return. When you give, the more you give, the more you receive from God, and God will bless you because He see the generosity that you have. He see the generous heart that you have. You have a heart that is willing to give without expecting anything in return. And I think that's one of the reasons why this story speaks so well, so high in my life, because this woman wanted to genuinely bless a man, because that's what she does. She wanted to bless the man of God without expecting anything in return. And that's one of the reasons why I love her story so much. Instead of expecting or wanting the man of God to bless her, she wanted to be a blessing to this man. Read on your own and find out all the little nuggets of how God has blessed this woman because of her generosity, because of the spirit of giving that was on her life. God was able to bless her in return tremendously. Even in later chapters, we find out that because of her generosity, God actually have blessed her in the future because of what she did. She planted a seed in the now, and then in the future, she go ahead and reaped that seed without even knowing what was going to happen in the future. But because of her generosity, because of her giving heart, God has restored everything that was taken from her. We're gonna read a couple of verses in 2 Kings 4, chapter 8 to 37. Now, basically, her story is that Elisha is a great man of God. Elisha usually come through town. However, because this woman wanted to bless Elisha, so every single time Elisha comes, Elisha would just stop by her house to basically get a meal to eat. This woman decided now, instead of having him to just come and eat and then go, because Elisha is a prophet who's traveling, so she decided to speak with her husband and ask the husband to, let's go ahead and create a room, make a room for this man of God to stay in. So whenever he comes, so he doesn't have to sleep out. He doesn't have to go anywhere else. He can just basically stay in our home, dwell in our home. The Spirit of God will be in our home. I'm just now putting that in it. But the Spirit of God will be dwelling in our home. That's what she did. She created a space for the man of God to come in and stay and dwell in. During that time, this woman, her husband now was an older guy. And she didn't have any child at all. She didn't have no children. Because of her generosity, Elisha was wondering, oh my gosh, what can I do for this woman because of her generosity? She didn't even ask me for anything, but she wanted to bless me. But in return, I would like to go ahead and bless her. What can I do for her to bless her? Now we're going to read in this chapter. It says, we are going to pick up on verse 9. She said to her husband, I know that this man who often comes our way is a holy man of God. Let's make a small room on the roof and put in a bed and a table, a chair and a lamp for him. Then he can stay there whenever he comes to us. Verse 11. One day Elisha came, he went up to his room and laid down there. He said to his servant Gehazi, instead of Gehazi, the English pronunciation, I'm going to stick to the Hebrew pronunciation. Gehazi, call the Shunammite. So he called her, and she stood before him. Elisha said to him, tell her, you have done all this trouble for us. Now what can we do for you? Can we speak on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army? Now, the commander of the army is Naaman. We know that Naaman from the previous video, Naaman was healed of leprosy because Elisha basically had commanded Naaman to go dip himself in the Jordan 7 times so that he can receive his healing. If you go back to the previous video, you will notice how Naaman basically got his healing. So moving forward. Now, the Shunammite woman answered Elisha and said, I have a home among my own people. I feel like the moment she said that, Elisha was not fully satisfied with her answer. Elisha wants to bless her, but in return, she was like, no, man of God, I don't really need anything. I just wanted to bless you. This is what I do. This is who I am. I'm not expecting anything in return from you. Just go ahead and take the blessing. So now Elisha is saying to himself, or maybe just talking, what can be done for her? Elisha asked Gehazi. Well, Gehazi, I feel like Gehazi was a little bit nosy. He said, well, she has no son. And plus her husband is old. Then Elisha said, call her. So he called her. And she stood in the doorway. Elisha proclaimed or decreed, right about this time next year, you are going to have a son. The woman decided and said, Elisha, man of God, please do not mislead your servant. Please do not mislead your servant. But fast forwarding, by this time next year, the Shunammite woman, the generous woman, was holding a baby in her arm. Hush, little baby, don't you cry. She's holding a baby in her arm. So, come to find out later in the same chapter, in chapter 4, as the boy grew up, he was basically in the field with his father while they were working. I can imagine during that time, probably in the heat, he probably maybe had a heat stroke. Who knows? The Bible mentioned that he had a headache. He could start complaining that my head is hurting, my head is hurting. And then the father said, take him to his mother. So the servant in the field at the time decided to take the boy to his mother. Now, throughout the day, the child is crying. The child is saying that my head is hurting. The mom is trying to rock the child, trying to find out what can be done as a mother. I'm a mother as well. We're trying to find the best way to console our children or our child. And then nothing seemed to work. Instead, this child ended up dying in her arm, in her lap. This woman, she has so much wisdom. She said, this child is dead. Now, she did not call her husband. She didn't call anybody in the field. She didn't call any of her servants. This woman was a well-to-know. The Bible described her as a woman who was well off. She basically was a rich woman. She knows she has things. She probably had a lot of wealth. She was well-to-do, kind of like the Proverb 31 woman. She was well off. She probably have a lot of servants working with her. Instead of calling, someone, calling the 911, instead she decided, well, my child is dead. I didn't ask God for this child. God decided to bless me with a child. In return, I'm going to give God this dead child. I'm going to give God this dead child. So what she did, she took the child and went up to the room that she had created, the room she made for the man of God to dwell in, for the Spirit of God to dwell in her home. She took the child and brought the child into that room where the presence of God was dwelling. She placed the child on the bed of the man where the man of God sleeps. She quickly called one of her servants. Get a donkey. I don't know how fast the donkeys back in the day used to run, but you would think that she probably called a horse. Get a horse, because the horse would go faster. She decided to get a donkey. Get on a donkey. Let's go. She didn't call her husband. She didn't call anyone. She didn't call a friend or family member. She called her servant with a donkey. We heading to the man of God. So now they are heading to Elisha. So now as she's coming, Elisha said to Gehazi, I see the Shunammite woman in the distance. Go meet with her and find out what's going on, because I do not know, because the Lord has not revealed to me what's going on. I feel like there's something urgent, there's an urgency with her coming my way. So now the woman of God is, the Shunammite woman is going to Elisha. And then Elisha is telling Gehazi to go ahead and meet with her. We're going to pick up on verse 20. So basically, after the father told the servant to carry the boy to his mother, on verse 20 it says, after the servant lifted the boy up and carried him to his mother, the boy sat on her lap until noon, and then he died. On verse 21, she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God and shut the door and went out. She called her husband and said, please send me one of the servants and a donkey so I can go to the man of God quickly and return. Now her husband answered her and said, why go to him today? It's not new moon. It's not the Sabbath. She said, that's all right. Basically, this woman was on a mission for her child's life. Okay? She wanted her child's life to return back to his body. Basically, saddled her donkey, and then she told her servant, let's go. Let's go. Do not slow down unless I tell you to slow down. Let's get going. So she was in such a mission, nothing could have stopped her. She just wanted to keep going and go get her blessing. Go get what God had promised her. Even though it has been taken away, she wanted to get it back. Now when Elisha saw her coming on the donkey, fasting, moving with the donkey, keep going with the servant, and the donkey's coming, that's when Elisha tell Gehazi, go ahead and meet with her and go find out what's going on. So when she got close to, or when Gehazi get close to her, so Gehazi asked her, are you okay? She said, everything is all right. Now, even when Gehazi was asking her, are you okay? Is your husband okay? Is your child okay? She said, everything is all right. Everything is all right. She basically didn't want to deal with Gehazi. She wanted to get to the source. She wanted to get to Elisha herself. She didn't want to have to pass this message to Gehazi to get to Elisha. She wanted to deliver her own message. How many times we have a message that we want to tell God? Instead, we ended up calling a pastor. We ended up calling a friend. We ended up calling whoever we think is, so-and-so because they know how to pray. Instead, we have the source, which is Jesus Christ, right there. We can actually go to him directly. We have access to the kingdom. Jesus has given us the kingdom, access to the kingdom, just so the same way prophets was able to deliver message to God, to take the message, or God passed the message to the prophet and the prophet will pass it to. Now we don't have to go through all that because of Jesus Christ. We have that access. Thank you for the blood. Thank you for the cross. Thank you for the cross that I can actually go directly to my Father. I don't have to go to a pastor. I don't have to go to nobody. I can go directly to God and say, God, this is what I'm dealing with today. This is what my family is going through. This is what my children is going through. This is what my friend is going through. I'm going to intervene. I am going to pray on behalf of my friend. I'm going to pray on behalf of my family member. I do not need to go and tell a leader or anybody because God already gave me the access through Jesus Christ, through the blood of the Lamb. Now the woman actually reached Elisha. When she, on verse 27, it says, when she reached the man of God at the mountain, she took hold of his feet. Now Gehazi is trying to hold her back. How many times when we're trying to get to our promised land or to our promise, we actually have an enemy trying to hold our back, trying to hold us back, to trying to get what belongs to us. Now Gehazi is trying to hold her back. Now the man of God, Elisha, said, no, leave her alone. She is in distress. I need to find out what's going on because God had not revealed to me what's going on with this woman. I need to find out from her myself. So now the woman of the Shunammite woman start saying, she was in bitter distress. So the Shunammite woman starts saying, did I ask for a son, my Lord? She said, didn't I tell you, don't raise my hopes? In verse 29, Elisha said to Gehazi, tuck your cloak into your belt. Take my staff in your hand and run. Don't greet anyone you meet. And if anyone greets you, do not answer. Lay my staff on the bed on the boy's face. But when Gehazi got there, nothing happened. He laid the staff, nothing happened. Verse 30. But the child's mother said, as surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you. So he got up and followed her. She said, I am not going to leave you, just like Jacob says. I am not going to leave you until you bless me. This woman was like, I'm going to get what I come here for. I'm not going to leave my home. I'm not going to leave a dead child in your bed. I'm going to come all this way, and you're going to go ahead and send Gehazi. I didn't come for Gehazi. I come for you. I come for you because you're the one who decreed this promise over me, and the Lord blessed me. I want you to come and raise my boy. So that's basically what I feel like that's basically what she was saying. So when Elisha reached the house, the boy was laying dead. We're on verse 32. When Elisha reached the house, the boy was laying dead on his couch. He went in and shut the door on the two of them, himself and the boy, and then prayed to the Lord. Okay, Elisha went and prayed to the Lord and lay on the bed, mouth to mouth, eye to eyes, eyes to eyes, hands to hands, and he stretched himself on the boy. The boy's body grew warm. Now, one thing I was wondering, how did Elijah know how to do this? How did Elisha know how to do this? Okay, if we go back to First King chapter 17, we know that Elisha was a student of Elijah. Elijah was a great prophet, and Elisha learned from Elijah. So the same thing that Elisha is doing right now in chapter 4 for the Shunammite woman, this thing was already done in First King chapter 17 with the boy, with the boy of the Zarephath widow. When Elijah was basically staying at the widow's house, her son also died, and Elijah did the same miracle for the same boy, the same exact way Elisha is doing it now. Elijah actually had done it in chapter 17 of First King. So Elisha basically followed what he saw his teacher did back in First King chapter 17. So now it says that he laid the boy mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hand. He stretched out on him. The boy's body grew warm. Verse 35, Elisha turned away and walked back and forth in the room, and then got on the bed and stretched out on him once more. The boy sneezed 7 times. We know that number 7 is a holy number. Okay, he sneezed 7 times. When I think about that 7 times that he sneezed, I'm like, fast forwarding to chapter 8 in 2 King, we will find out maybe that's the reason why he sneezed 7 times, because God was actually giving us a sign of what was to come in the future. So after he sneezed, Elisha summoned Gehazi, called the Shunammite woman. Gehazi called the Shunammite woman, and he told her, here is your blessing. Take your son, take your blessing, take your promise with you. The desire of your heart that nobody could see, God has given it back again to you. You lost him, you give it to God, and God is giving it back to you again. So the woman she took her son and went away. What a promise. What a great story. Because of her generosity, God has blessed her. In return, she didn't just get a blessing, she got a promise. And if we fast forwarding in chapter 8 of 2 King chapter 8, we find out that there was a famine in the land where she was living. Elijah told her, I'm not going to read this chapter because it's kind of long a little bit, but Elisha basically told her there's going to be a 7 years famine in the land. I need for you to get away from this area. I need you to go somewhere else. And so she decided, she took her family, she took her son and her family. She moved to the Philistine country. She was not even an Israelite woman. She was a Philistine. She was one of the Philistine who has a compassionate heart, who has a giving heart, a generous heart to bless the men of God. And in return, because of her generosity, God blessed her tremendously. And God also didn't just give her a son. Because of because when the famine happened, she lost everything. Because of her generosity, now she wanted to gain her, now the famine is over. She wanted to go back to her land. She wanted to get her house again. She wanted to get her land again. She wanted to get everything that she lost. Now she's going to the king, and here is Gehazi and also Elisha saying, Gehazi telling the king, this is the same Shunammite woman that Elisha brought her son back to life. So because of her generosity, the king decided to make sure that this woman received everything that was taken from her during the famine. Everything. She gained everything back. Sometimes when we lose something, we don't just lose it just because. We don't just lose it. Sometimes we may lose something just for a short period of time, but God would actually give it back to us in return. One of the greatest lessons that I've learned from this woman's story is that the Bible describes her as a well-to-do woman. She was a woman who took care of her home. She took care of a prophet, someone who is able to give back to people that she loves, people in her surrounding. She has a generous heart. She knew exactly what she wants and she went after it. She had a promise in her life and God proclaimed that promise, and she had the son and God gave her a son. And she got her promise back even after the son was dead. God gave her, breathed life back into her son. She didn't quit because of her generosity. Members of her family is able to gain life again. She made a room for God to come in. Because of her greatness, because of her generosity. She didn't want to just feed the men of God, but she wanted to go beyond a meal. She wanted to go beyond the spoon. She wanted to go beyond the fork to bless this man of God. And in return, the seed that she planted, she reaped a great harvest at the end. What marvelous, what great attribute that when we are walking with God, God's hand is on our life. God is able to do great wonders for us. The fact that she knows exactly what she wanted, and the fact that she was not a stingy woman, she opened her home. When she created a space, she allows God to move in. The same way too, when we have a lot of baggage in our lives, if we get rid of all these baggages and create room for God to come in, God is going to dwell in. God is going to call you my daughter. God is going to call you my son. God is going to call you my child. No matter what is going on, no matter what storm is going outside, God is going to protect you. This woman, there was a great famine, but God protected her in her household because of her generosity, because of her heart. She was not even a Jewish woman. She was just one of these other nations who honored God, who honored the men of God. She created a space. She created a room God dwells in. The presence of God was there. And it moves in and it flows in, even through the full 7 years of famine. This woman gained everything that she lost. I pray and decree that whatever the devil has taken away from you today, let the mighty hand of God be on you. No matter what the devil has taken, has stolen from you, I decree and declare that the Lord, the mighty God, that the mighty hand of God will take it back and bring it back 100-fold. That is my prayer today for you. May the glory of God continue to dwell in your life. Go out and be generous, be kind, be humble. Let God use you for his kingdom. Even if you cannot give much, but just give a smile. Because through your smile, somebody else will be able to smile. Until next time, may the glory of God dwell in your home, dwell in your life. Stay tuned for our next video of Women Speaks. Thank you.